Captain, with all due respect, we should wait for a male pilot for this mission. The colonel's words cut through the briefing room as 25-year-old Captain Sophia Reyes stands at the mission board, her hand already on the helicopter keys, while 30 soldiers wait on the tarmac for emergency extraction from a Taliban ambush in the mountains of Afghanistan. Behind her, 3 male pilots shake their heads, all of them refusing to fly into the kill zone because the weather conditions are impossible and the landing zone is under heavy fire. What the colonel doesn't know is that Sophia has more combat flight hours than anyone in the entire battalion, and she's about to fly a mission that will be studied in aviation schools for the next decade. Before we see what happens next, smash that subscribe button if you love stories of warriors who prove everyone wrong when lives are on the line, and comment below about a time someone doubted you before you showed them what you could do. Sophia had wanted to fly helicopters since she was 8 years old. Growing up in Texas, she would watch military helicopters flying overhead during training exercises from nearby Fort Hood, and something about them just captured her imagination. The power, the precision, the way they could go places nothing else could reach. Her parents thought it was a phase. Her high school guidance counselor suggested nursing or teaching. Her first boyfriend told her girls couldn't be pilots, that she should be more realistic about her future. She proved them all wrong. Sophia joined him. The Army right after high school and applied for the Warrant Officer Flight Training Program. The selection process was brutal. Out of 200 applicants in her group, only 30 were accepted. Sophia was one of 2 women. Flight school was even harder. The academic work was intense, the physical training pushed her to her limits, and the actual flying required a level of focus and skill that washed out more than half her class. But Sophia had something that test scores couldn't measure. She had instinct, natural ability, the kind of feel for an aircraft that instructors recognized immediately. She graduated near the top of her class and was assigned to fly Black Hawks. Over the next 4 years, she accumulated more flight hours than pilots twice her age. She flew medevac missions, transport runs, and combat insertions. She earned her air assault badge, her combat patch, and a reputation as one of the most skilled pilots in her unit. But she still dealt with doubt. Still heard the comments, still watched male pilots with less experience get chosen for high-profile missions, while she got routine transport runs. That changed on a Tuesday morning in October. Sophia was stationed at Forward Operating Base Shank in the Logar province of Afghanistan. Her unit supported ground operations throughout the region, providing air transport and emergency extraction when things went wrong. That morning, a patrol of 30 soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division had been conducting a reconnaissance mission in the mountains near the Pakistan border. It was supposed to be routine: check a few villages, gather intelligence, and return to base by afternoon. But intelligence was wrong. The Taliban had been tracking the patrol since they left the base. They waited until the soldiers were deep in the mountains, far from support, then hit them with everything they had. The ambush was devastating. RPGs, machine gun fire, mortars. The patrol took casualties immediately and fell back to a defensive position on a ridge. They were surrounded on 3 sides, pinned down, running low on ammunition. The call for emergency. Extraction came through at 9:30 in the morning. Sophia was in the operations center when she heard it. The radio chatter was frantic. Multiple wounded. Heavy contact. Requesting immediate air support and medevac. The operations officer started coordinating a response. Apache gunships were scrambled to provide cover fire. A Black Hawk medevac team was alerted, but they needed someone to fly in and pull the soldiers out. The problem was the weather. A massive storm system had moved into the mountains. Visibility was near zero. Winds were gusting over 40 miles per hour. The clouds were so thick that flying through them would be like flying blind. The operations officer looked at the 3 pilots who were on standby. All men, all experienced. "Who's taking this mission?" The first pilot looked at the weather report and shook his head. "That's suicide. We can't fly in those conditions." The second pilot agreed. "We'd be flying instruments through mountain terrain in zero visibility. One mistake, and we're a crater on the side of a mountain." The third pilot, a warrant officer named Davis, who had been flying for 8 years, spoke up. "I'll do it, but I need better weather. Give me an hour for this storm to pass, and I'll go in." The operations officer's face was grim. "They don't have an hour. They're getting overrun right now." "Then we wait for the Apaches to clear the area first," Davis said. "I'm not flying into a hot LZ in this weather." "That's not brave. That's stupid." Sophia had been listening to the whole conversation. She stepped forward. "I'll go." Everyone in the room turned to look at her. The operations officer frowned. "Captain Reyes, did you hear what they just said? The conditions are impossible." "I heard," Sophia said. "I can do it." Davis actually laughed. "Sophia, you're good, but you're not that good. Nobody is. Those mountains will kill you before the Taliban gets a chance." The colonel in charge of the operations center, a hard-faced man named Patterson, looked at Sophia carefully. "Captain, with all due respect, we should wait for a male pilot for this mission. This requires someone with extensive combat flight experience." Sophia felt her jaw tighten. Sir, I have 400 combat flight hours. That's more than anyone else in this room. I've flown in worse conditions than this. I can get those soldiers out. Patterson looked uncomfortable. The politics of the situation were clear. If he let her go and she crashed, he would be crucified for sending a female pilot on a suicide mission. If he didn't let her go and those soldiers died waiting for better weather, he would be crucified for not doing everything possible to save them. Sophia didn't give him time to decide. Sir, those soldiers are dying right now. Every minute we waste debating this is a minute they don't have. I'm the best pilot for this mission, and you know it. Patterson held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Go. But I'm sending Lieutenant Morrison with you as co-pilot. Morrison was one of the pilots who had refused the mission. He looked like he wanted to argue, but Patterson's expression made it clear this wasn't optional. 10 minutes later, Sophia was running through her pre-flight checks. The Black Hawk's rotors were spinning up, the turbines screaming. Morrison climbed into the co-pilot seat, his face pale. You really think you can do this? He asked. Sophia adjusted her helmet and gripped the controls. We're about to find out. They lifted off into conditions that made Morrison grip his seat. The wind hit them immediately, pushing the helicopter sideways. Rain hammered against the windscreen so hard they could barely see. Sophia fought the controls, making constant, tiny adjustments to keep them stable. They climbed into the cloud layer, and the world disappeared. Zero visibility. They were flying entirely on instruments now, trusting the altimeter and GPS to tell them where the mountains were. Sophia's hands were steady. She had trained for this. Night flying, instrument flying, emergency procedures. She had spent hundreds of hours in simulators dealing with situations exactly like this. But this wasn't a simulator. This was real. One mistake, and they were dead. Morrison was reading off. Altitude and heading information, his voice tight with fear. Ridgeline at our 2 o'clock, 500 meters. We need to climb. Sophia pulled up, the helicopter straining against the wind. They cleared the ridge with 100 feet to spare. The radio crackled. This is Ground Team Alpha. We are under heavy fire. Multiple wounded. We cannot hold this position much longer. Sophia keyed her mic. Alpha, this is Rescue Bird. We are 5 minutes out. Prepare for emergency extraction. Have your wounded ready to load. Copy that, Rescue Bird. Be advised, LZ is hot. Heavy small arms fire and RPGs. Morrison looked at Sophia. They're shooting at us the second we land. Sophia's expression didn't change. Then we don't stay on the ground long. They broke through the cloud layer 2 minutes later. Below them was chaos. The ground team was pinned on a small ridge, maybe 50 meters wide. Muzzle flashes lit up the surrounding hillsides as Taliban fighters poured fire into the American position. The Apache gunships were there, firing rockets and cannon runs to suppress the enemy, but there were too many targets. The Taliban had positioned themselves in caves and behind rocks, where the Apaches couldn't reach them. Sophia assessed the landing zone. It was tiny, rocky, surrounded by enemy fire. The wind was still gusting, pushing the helicopter around like a toy. Morrison saw where she was planning to land. There's no room. The tail rotor will hit those rocks. Sophia's hands moved on the controls with absolute precision. Watch me. She brought the Black Hawk down in a combat descent, diving fast to minimize their time in the enemy's sights. Tracers lit up the air around them. Something hit the fuselage with a sharp crack. Morrison flinched. We're taking fire. Sophia ignored him. She was completely focused on the landing. The wind was pushing them toward the rocks. She compensated, adjusting thrust and angle faster than Morrison could process. The helicopter touched down with the precision of a surgeon, 6 inches from the rocks on one side. The skids perfectly positioned on the only flat section of ground. The crew chief threw open the side doors. Go, go, go. Soldiers ran toward the helicopter carrying wounded on stretchers. The crew chief and medic helped load them, working frantically while bullets snapped through the air above them. Sophia held the helicopter perfectly steady despite the wind trying to push them into the rocks. Her hands made constant micro-adjustments, her feet working the pedals, her eyes scanning instruments and the terrain simultaneously. Morrison was calling out threats. RPG, 3 o'clock? Sophia saw it. A Taliban fighter on the hillside aiming a rocket-propelled grenade directly at them. If he fired, they were done. One of the Apaches saw it too. A burst of cannon fire tore up the hillside, and the RPG fighter disappeared in a cloud of dust and rocks. The crew chief shouted into the intercom. Last casualty aboard. We're loaded. Sophia didn't wait. She pulled power and lifted off, the helicopter clawing for altitude. More fire came their way. She banked hard left, using the terrain to shield them, then climbed back into the clouds. Morrison was breathing hard. Holy shit, holy shit. We just did that. Sophia's hands were still steady. Call it in. Let them know we're coming back with 30 passengers and 5 critical wounded. The flight back was just as bad as the flight in. The storm hadn't let up, but Sophia navigated through it like she had a map in her head, finding the safe paths between the mountains, making adjustments so smooth that the wounded soldiers barely felt any turbulence. They landed at the base hospital 22 minutes after lifting off from the ridge. Medical teams rushed forward to unload the wounded. Every single soldier they extracted was alive. The medics later said that if the extraction had taken even 10 minutes longer, at least 3 of the wounded would have died from blood loss. Sophia shut down the helicopter and sat there for a moment, her hands finally starting to shake now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Morrison looked at her with something close to awe. That was the most incredible flying I've ever seen. How did you even do that? Sophia pulled off her helmet. Training, practice, and not giving up even when everyone says it's impossible. She climbed out of the helicopter to find Colonel Patterson waiting. His expression was unreadable. "Captain Reyes," he said, "I owe you an apology. And a commendation. What you just did was extraordinary. You saved 30 lives today in conditions where no one else would even try." Behind him, the 3 pilots who had refused the mission stood watching. Davis, the one who had laughed at her offer to go, stepped forward. "You made us all look like cowards," he said quietly. "But you also showed us what real courage looks like." "I'm sorry for doubting you," Sophia nodded. "Just remember this. Next time someone tells you a woman can't do something. We can do anything you can do. Sometimes we can do it better." The story of Sophia's rescue mission spread through the military within days. Flight instructors showed the mission data to students as an example of perfect flying under impossible conditions. The Army Times ran a feature story. She was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of the highest honors for aviation valor. But Sophia didn't change. She kept flying missions, kept proving herself, kept showing up every day, ready to do whatever was needed. A year later, when a reporter asked her about that day in the mountains, Sophia kept her answer simple. "I was the right person in the right place at the right time," she said. "Those soldiers needed someone who could fly that helicopter through that storm. I could do it, so I did. That's not heroism. That's just doing your job." But everyone who was there that day knew the truth. It wasn't just doing a job. It was doing the impossible. And Sophia Reyes had made it look easy.